the Galactic Empire was a brutal regime, one which suppressed its citizens' freedoms, cracked down on dissenters, and liberally used weapons of mass destruction. Despite this, however, Palpatine was extremely popular in both the Senate and with the wider galactic population. So how did this happen? How could a brutal dictator have such a high approval rating? As we will explore in this video, there are in fact many reasons why a repulsive, war-mongering dictator such as Palpatine could have such widespread support. However, dictators are never created in a vacuum. To truly understand how the Emperor was so popular, we must first understand the context from which he rose to power. The Sith knew that to truly take over the galaxy, they had to attain public support. The Sith had spent many years trying to take over the galaxy through military might. However, this pretty much always failed. Darth Bane's rule of two changed all of this. The Sith Order transformed itself from a threatening empire of warriors, dictators, and spies into an organisation of bankers, oligarchs, and politicians that used the Republic's own democratic system to undermine it, allowing them to be perfectly poised to seize power when the time came. And indeed, that time would come. After spending many thousands of years locked in conflict either directly or in a cold war, the Republic eventually triumphed. Over the millennium that followed, the Republic would slowly change into something unrecognisable. Without an enemy to fight, rally against, and remind them of what not to be, they slowly lost their way. The democratic system that they had once held as their founding principle was slowly eroded away. Large corporations such as the Trade Federation grew to enormous sizes, unparalleled in galactic history. Senators began receiving donations, gifts, and outright bribes from these transgalactic conglomerates, and very soon they even had their own voting power within the Senate. The wheels of the democratic system became clogged up, and very soon it became clear that the politicians and bureaucrats did not represent the people, but instead the oligarchical megacorporations that paid for their generous salaries. Very soon, these oligarchs held immense power, enough to strip entire worlds of their freedom, as we saw during the blockade of Naboo. As we explored in this video on the tragic early life of General Grievous, the Republic's war apparatus that once served to protect the people against tyranny was used in the service of so-called free trade and security. Outer Rim world's leaders who refused to join the Republic or have their resources plundered by the various megacorporations were deposed, often through secretive coups or by stoking tensions with rival planets. Many Outer Rim worlds suffered greatly during this time. Many trillions of citizens worked for measly wages in harsh conditions to feed the insatiable desire for material possessions in the core worlds. Despite being outlawed, slavery was also commonplace on many worlds and sectors, and their inhabitants were treated as tradable commodities. However, the Republic did very little to prevent these atrocities and rarely enforced its own laws in the Outer Rim. Many of these megacorporations, as well as the immensely rich core worlds, profited immensely from cheap labour and raw materials from these backwater Outer Rim worlds. Many senators would not risk their positions by cracking down on these immoral practices. The Republic had been gutted from the inside, corrupted by the greed brought on by its own economic success. Its lack of enemy caused many to abandon the democratic ideals of the past in favour of profit. However, a society like this cannot last. Many were justly angry at the growing inequality, obvious corruption, and harsh lives that they lived. Many wanted change, but the Senate was now completely jammed up, paralysed by the vast amount of corporate money that flowed through it. And into this power vacuum stepped the Sith. Former Jedi and highly respected politician Count Dooku began stoking separatist tensions within the Outer Rim, using legitimate grievances with the Republic to rise to power. Meanwhile, Palpatine capitalized on the fear of the core worlds about the separatist threat, and as tensions rose, so too did his power and popularity. He had also positioned himself as a populist politician who represented the people. Many saw him as one of the few politicians who was willing to take a tough stance against the corporations and their cronies in the Senate. After all, Palpatine had risen to power, standing up against the Trade Federation on behalf of his homeworld of Naboo. Many corporations, fearful of Palpatine's anti-corruption rhetoric, flocked to fund and arm the separatist movement. This tension would culminate in the Clone Wars, the most devastating war of all time. Across the galaxy, many worlds and populations were devastated by the conflict. Even the rich and powerful saw their fair share of the war during the Battle of Coruscant. And it was in this chaos and fear that democracy truly died. many were so fearfully desperate for peace they accepted the Empire with open arms. Palpatine promised that chaotic freedom was to be replaced with security, and liberty with safety. And so the Republic died in thunderous applause. And as bad as the Empire was, it also did away with a lot of the worst parts of the Republic. Many of the greedy megacorporations that had exploited the galaxy were absorbed into the Empire. Many citizens from backwater worlds were finally given a chance to rise up within the Imperial infrastructure. Billions of jobs were created in manufacturing and the military, giving people a chance at success for the first time. It is therefore easy to see why the wider galaxy, who were unaware of Palpatine's machinations, would view Palpatine as a hero. First, he had stood up to the corrupt Senate. He had then destroyed the Separatists and their megacorporation backers, before foiling an alleged plot by the Jedi. And after all that, he was giving many a chance to succeed in his new, seemingly meritocratic empire that was apparently hell-bent on bringing safety and peace to the galaxy. However, he didn't just bring security, order, and jobs to the galaxy. He also brought a twisted sense of purpose in the form of extreme nationalism. In Legends, many separatist worlds held out for almost a decade. Palpatine was able to turn any anger outward towards the separatist holdouts, which he claimed had to be forcefully reabsorbed back into the Empire, distracting from the repressive actions and failings of his own government. Therefore, many were truly willing to die for the Empire, something that could be rarely said for its predecessor in its twilight years. Through exploiting the legitimate and illegitimate grievances and fears throughout the galaxy, Palpatine was able to gain popularity unparalleled in galactic history. And yes, while he took away power from the corrupt senators and megacorporations, this power was never handed back to the people. Instead, it was centralized around himself, a tyrant who would often exploit worlds and people to a greater extent than the corporations ever did. Vilifying groups as the enemy is a tried and tested way of gaining political support, and this can be legitimate, as was the case for his combative approach against exploitative megacorporations, oligarchs, and corrupt senators, as we've already discussed. However, after the legitimate bad guys have been defeated, how do you continue to stay in power? You instead turn your attention to vilifying other groups, such as religious minorities, people who look different to you, or systems that have declared independence from your empire, a tactic used extensively by Palpatine and sadly still in the real world too. However, power corrupts, absolutely, and in his old age, Palpatine became far more heavy-handed, even within the core worlds, decreasing his popularity drastically and sparking the Galactic Civil War, although that's a video for another day. If you enjoyed this analytical style of video, then be sure to check out my video on why Palpatine didn't use CIS battle droids in the Imperial Army. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, may the Force be with you.